When will the Detroit Lions get back their star players? When will Aleem McNeil return? When will Malcolm Rodriguez return? When will Sam Laporta and Kirby Joseph and several starting players contributing return to the offense and the defense? There is a lot of injury luck going around, and most of it bad for the Detroit Lions. Last season, they lost players like Aidan Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, Aleem McNeil, Alex Anzalone, Derek Barnes, Malcolm Rodriguez, Amik Robertson for the playoffs, Mekhi Wingo, and several other players, several other playmakers. And really, by the end of the season, it was mostly a practice squad defense. They lost a record 22 players to season-ending injury reserve a year ago, and they kind of limped into the playoffs without a whole lot of hope for the defensive side of the ball. In turn, they allowed 45 points. They got blown out at home, and it was a really poor day to be a Lions fan. And that injury luck, unfortunately, continued the 2025 preseason, where the Detroit Lions lost Levi Onwuzurike on just the second day of training camp. They lost Ahmad Hassanin after the second preseason game. They lost Graham Glasgow in the last joint practice before the Houston Texans game. They lost Terrion Arnold for a time. They've lost Josh Paschal for a longer time than originally projected. They've lost Josh Paschal. They've lost Dan Jackson. They've lost Kirby Joseph for a bit. They lost Sam Laporta for a while. And even Tim Patrick missed a couple of weeks in training camp after struggling to connect with Jared Goff through the first couple of weeks and going on the injury list. So it is safe to say that the Detroit Lions will not be at full strength when week one rolls around. And it is probably fair to say that they won't be to full strength until at least halfway through the season when Aleem McNeil returns from his ACL injury. But when will these players return? When will these stars of the Detroit Lions roster, when will these contributors be back and be contributing to help the Detroit Lions find success in 2025? That is what we'll be taking a look at today, taking a look at how the Detroit Lions offense and defense will evolve throughout the season, what differences they may look like throughout the different weeks and throughout the different months, and really, as they approach playoff time, how healthy this team could be going into a situation that they utterly failed at a season ago. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Taking a look first at the August returns, and there's some good news here. Kirby Joseph is already back practicing, picked off CJ Stroud in their joint practice versus the Texans. Sam Laporta is already returning, and his injury seems to be fairly minor going into the season. Tim Patrick has returned and looks much better than he did before he left with his injury concerns. And Khalil Dorsey, a depth cornerback that has been with the Detroit Lions for a number of years, a great special teams contributor, a strong tackler, a big hitter, unfortunately broke his tibia and his fibia, a very similar injury to Aidan Hutchinson in week 12 a season ago, and it was a bad injury. He, of course, was immediately placed on a season-ending IR and had not returned since. But over the last couple of weeks, he has been removed from the physically unable to perform list, and even though he's not quite at 100%, he will add some good cornerback depth. He will add some great special teams versatility as a gunner, as a coverage player, and even potentially as a kick returner, and he is a good player to have back. So the Lions will get a bit of a boost of this roster as they go into their 53-man roster cuts. So the week one roster will look fairly strong. The starters on offense are almost 100%. Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Isaac Tesla, and Tim Patrick as your wide receivers, and then a healthy offensive line of Decker, Mahogany, Glasgow, Ratledge, and Sewell. Now, Glasgow did miss a couple of practices at the end of training camp, but it came out that things were not very major, that they're not very concerned about it, and with a couple of weeks to go until the NFL Week 1, they expect Graham Glasgow to not only return to practice, but be ready to play in Lambeau when they travel down there on September the 4th. Now, with that being said, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, we get quite a bit of an upgrade moving into 2025. Aidan Hutchinson returns. DJ Reader is still in the middle. Tyleik Williams gets added. Marcus Davenport returns. Alex Anzalone's back to 100%. Jack Campbell, a player that really kept the defense together a season ago, is healthy and ready to go. Derek Barnes returns. DJ Reed was added. Terrion Arnold is back to 100%. Amik Robertson returns to this defense. And, of course, Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch continue to be one of the best safety duos in football. But you take a look at that roster. You bring back from injury Hutchinson, Davenport, Anzalone, who wasn't fully healthy, Derek Barnes, Terrion Arnold, and Amik Robertson. So that's 6 of your 11 starters that you're bringing back from injury that didn't play in the playoff game. And then you're bringing back guys like Tyleik Williams, who was drafted, and he's adding to this team. You bring in DJ Reed from free agency. He adds to this team. So that's another 2 players that weren't in the playoff game. And 7 of your 11 defensive starters who will likely take the field in week 1 were not available in the playoffs. And that's kind of the level of production, the level of talent that they will be returning, and really how much they were struggling going into that 2024 playoff run. Now, as the Detroit Lions move through the season, obviously they're going to get a bit healthier. Barring any major injuries, they should only get better as the season moves on. Going into September, they should expect to return Maurice Norris, who unfortunately suffered that major concussion in the Atlanta Falcons game. He has returned to the team facility. He has returned to the Detroit Lions, and he is, with teammates. He is in team meetings. And even though he isn't practicing as of today, he should be able to recover within the next month and be ready to return to this team as a depth safety, as a special teams option, and a player that even played in the playoff game a season ago. It was very limited in number of snaps, but he did play and honestly was okay when he did play. Mekhi Wingo is likely to return at some point in early September as well. He was removed from the physically unable to perform list and is likely at this point just going through rehab, going through training to get back into football shape, kind of doing a mini training camp, if you will, to prepare him for the season. And he could potentially play as early as week 1 for the Detroit Lions, adding back a young pass rusher, adding back a great third down specialist, adding back a good player to collapse pockets, to pressure the quarterback, and a pass rusher that the Detroit Lions were sorely in need of at the end of last season. Josh Paschal did get some unfortunate injury news where it said Josh Paschal's surgery, his cleanup surgery that he had this year, it didn't go as well as they thought and did have a minor setback. With that being said, Josh Paschal should still be able to return to this team by the end of September, if not the very beginning of October, adding back a great edge setter, a fantastic run defender, and when on the field, a very reliable player when it comes to stopping the run, a powerful pass rusher. And even though he's not the most productive player, he is immediately going to slide into likely that edge rusher 3 role behind Davenport and behind Aidan Hutchinson. And if a player like Marcus Davenport is injured, he's going to immediately slide in as a starter to return production to this defensive line. So they'll get a couple minor depth pieces returning on the defense in September, and then going into October, they're going to get even more. Ahmad Hassanin is likely to return. He had a pectoral injury in his upper body in the second week of the preseason, and even though he is out for a couple of weeks and even a couple of months, he's not going on IR, he's not getting surgery, which are both very good signs for the healing process, and that likely means he returns at some point throughout October. On top of that, Miles Frazier should be healthy by October, meaning they add some depth on the offensive line, a player that, they probably need at this point. Guys like Kayode Awashie, guys like Colby Sorsdale probably aren't going to make the cut, and if they do, it likely isn't going to be a long-term option. Much like Christian Mahogany a season ago, Miles Frazier is going to come into this roster. He's going to be immediate depth, immediate quality, and if they need him to play, they will play him. Much like Mahogany a season ago, he was injured up and through about November, and then he played a couple of games, he played some special team snaps, and by week 13, he was starting against the Chicago Bears, and of course made that fantastic start in the playoffs versus the Washington Commanders. Malcolm Rodriguez is also expected to return sometime in October. It's been reported on that he is not only running, but he is cutting, he is making some football moves, and while he is certainly not 100%, he is a little bit ahead of schedule of where he needs to be, and could return to this linebacking core that not necessarily needs another linebacker, but could certainly use some more quality depth. That means you have guys like Anzalone healthy, Jack Campbell healthy, Derek Barnes healthy, Malcolm Rodriguez is healthy, with guys like Zach Cunningham, Trevor Nowaske, and some really good, talented linebackers in that core, and becoming one of the deepest and most talented groups across the NFL in just a matter of months going into the NFL season. And then, of course, the big one. At the very end of November, around Thanksgiving, Alim McNeill is expected to return to this roster. And Alim McNeill is a player that is very important for this Detroit Lions roster. He is the best interior defensive lineman they have. They just gave him a $100 million contract going back to last offseason, and he was really good last year. He was one of the Detroit Lions' best players. He kept this defense together from the front seven perspective when Aidan Hutchinson went down, when Marcus Davenport went down, when Alex Anzalone went down. Alim McNeill really stepped up and played really good football. The statistics may not look like it. I believe he only had 3.5 sacks a season ago, but he's a great run stopper. He's so disruptive in the middle and really is a heartbeat of this defense. Returning him to a defensive line of Aidan Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, Alim McNeill, DJ Reader, Tyleik Williams, even guys like Al-Quadin Muhammad and Josh Paschal, the run defense should look significantly better than it did a season ago, and we've gotten good news over the last couple of months. Alim McNeill himself says he's ahead on his training process, he's ahead on his recovery schedule, and at the very latest, he will join the Detroit Lions by Thanksgiving, if not a week or two earlier. So, some really good news there, and even though the Lions are facing quite a few injuries, and even though they will likely face a few more throughout the year, they're going to continue to get healthy. They're going to continue to return veterans veterans, to return playmakers, to return stars to the defensive side of the ball and a little bit to the offensive side. And they should only get better as the season moves forward. As the playoffs get close, it honestly doesn't matter anymore if the Detroit Lions win the division. It doesn't matter anymore if they're the 1 seed. We've proved both times that those things don't necessarily matter. What matters is the Lions make the playoffs, that they're healthy when they make the playoffs. And if it's 4 games between the Detroit Lions and a Super Bowl, I trust the Detroit Lions to win 4 games, especially if they go into the playoffs with Aidan Hutchinson, especially if they go into the playoffs with Alim McNeill and Tyreek Williams and DJ Reader and Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch and that super deep linebacking core. If the Lions are healthy going into the playoffs, whether they're a 15-1 seed or a 10-7 seed, they are going to be one of the most dangerous teams in the playoffs. They're going to be one of the worst teams to draw as a team in the playoffs. And if they make it healthy, they're going to make a run. So that being said, that is kind of an update on when we expect players to return from injury. Some major ones coming in October and November, some minor upgrades coming here in September as we approach week 1. But with that being said, let me know down in the comments below, what are your expectations for these players when they return? Did I miss a player that you want to hear about for an injury return race? I'd love to hear you guys' opinions down in the comments below of the injuries we've sustained and how you feel going into week 1. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.